So whoever, okay.
Yay!
Oh, Milo, you have to tell all your jokes again.
Oh, I gotta tell them all again. They're even worse the second time you tell them. I will. I can tell the cheese joke maybe.
The nacho cheese joke.
You can't just give it away like that.
Oh, sorry.
With a
Okay.
foot-long nose.
All right. So, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well this morning. On behalf of Old Republic Title, we would like to thank you for joining us for this event with Council Chair Arryl Kaneshiro and Council Member KipuKai Kuali'i. We also want to say mahalo to Milo Spint for moderating the questions that you may have at the end of the presentation. And a big mahalo to our guest speakers for spending some time with us to share their mana'o on Bill 277, currently in its third draft, and its exemptions on multifamily projects developed in town core areas on Kauai. We thank you both for your service and your hard work that you have dedicated over the years as leaders in our county government. Before we start, I want to briefly acknowledge some of the attendees that were able to join us this morning. We have Carice Caspero Gardner. She is the Governor Ige's liaison for Kauai. We have Suli Loy from County of Hawaii. She's a council member on the Big Island. We also have County of Kauai candidates, Jade Waialeale Batad, Addison Bolosan, and Mike Dandaran. Congratulations on making it to the general elections, and thank you for your willingness to serve Kauai and Ni'ihau. From Kauai Board of Realtors, we have our very own Karen Ono. And also joining us today from Old Republic Title, we have our Hawaii sales manager, Kelly Ikeda Ellis. And Kelly would like to say a few words as well.
Good morning, everyone. I think Shyla covered it all, and it's okay. No, she's fantastic that way, and I just want to, thank everyone for being here this morning. And Old Republic's goal has always been to add value and set the bar for quality escrow and title services. So, for those of you who worked with Shyla and our teams in Kapa'a and Koloa, you would know that, they really live this goal. So as a value add, Shyla has connected with Councilman Kaneshiro and Councilman Kuali'i to provide information about Housing Bill 2774 for all of you. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate your business, and we really look forward to the day when we can meet all of you in person soon. I came to the GMM last year and it was really fun. I saw the unicorn costumes in full force and Shyla's amazing balloon arch that she put up with all the lights and blinking. So I was hoping we could do that again this past June, but hopefully next year. So I'll look forward to meeting all of you again sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, so Arryl and KipuKai, would you like to share your screen and start your presentation?
All right, I'll just start on behalf of Chair Kaneshiro and I to say mahalo nui loa to Old Republic Title and to Shyla and to all of you for tuning in. So we'll just give a brief update of the bill and where it's at now. And I would just say that this bill was a long time in the making, years. Couple of councils ago, Council Member Yukimura had a task force that was working with community to get input. And then the last council, Council Member Broom also had a task force working with community and stakeholders to get input, all to work on updating our housing policy. So in this last term, and they were both the housing chairs before as well. So in this last term, when I started as housing chair, it kind of became my responsibility to pick it up. And I thought it was really important to actually draft a bill and put a bill forward And I thought that it would probably be the most important bill we work on this term. So I asked Council Chair to co-sponsor the bill with me. And so, of course, starting last fall, we worked with the administration. At the time, our housing director, Adam Roversi, was brand new, but he kind of dove right in and got right to work with the mayor and the managing director, and then, of course, with our housing director. And so we drafted this bill and put it forward. The bill was basically based on the housing, the nexus analysis. So the last task force had said that what they would do is hire a study. And so they hired Keyser Marston Associates. You can go.
Inshallah, you can see the shared screen, okay.
And that study was completed last June and came before the council. And basically the study provides the data and the justification. And the first part of the study has a lot of recommendations of what we should be addressing and working on this bill. So this first bill is not meant to be the end all or catch all, but it's meant to take a first stab at making some changes based on the study. So it's not only based on the study, but it's also based on the general plan. And the big part of the general plan is about infill housing. So the idea of supporting and incentivizing infill housing and the housing that they talk about as the missing middle, which could include small scale, multi-unit housing, such as duplexes, fourplexes, and bungalow courts. So the bill at this point, I think the numbers are a little bit higher, but 2/3 of the amendments are non-substantive and housekeeping, grammatical changes, updates, recommendations from housing. As we make changes, then it affects different parts of the bill that has to be changed. And then the substantive amendments, again, are based on the nexus analysis and the general plan. And we'll go over a few of those in just a second. And the last thing I wanted to start off as far as part of the background was basically what we've been doing so far. So the bill went to first hearing in the end of January, public hearing early in February, and then it's been in our housing committee since. So we've been working on it with further amendments. Ultimately, the bill is an entire package of amendments. So in the end, the housing committee will approve out recommendations on all these amendments, and then it will go to the full council. But we've also continued to work on it. We had a workshop last week. We've also had Zoom meetings like this with stakeholders along the way, but the workshop was last week, and we're back in committee on September 9th. So based on the workshop, we got a lot of input too, and so we could be making a lot of changes or additional proposals, and you'll hear about that as we talk about the specifics. So now Arryl will tell you about one of the big ones, the first ones.
Okay, so one of the first changes comes from directly from the nexus analysis, and it concludes that the units priced at 140% AMI were too close to market rate units. And so they recommended that we eliminate the 140% AMI requirement. And so, currently the missing middle, that workforce housing that we're trying to hit, trying to get affordable housing for, is the 80% to 140% of AMI. And based on the Nexus study, they said that the 140% is too close to market rates. And so they suggested that we eliminate the 140% requirement. And my next slide, I'll show you, I'll show you so for 2020, on the left side of the screen, you can see these are the income limits. So at 140% AMI, someone can sell a 3-bedroom unit for $737,000. And if it's a CPR unit, it'll be $695,000 is the selling price. Again, the CPR unit is a little less, considering that, taking into account that they're probably gonna have to pay common area maintenance fees or some type of HOA fee with a CPR. So you can see 737,000 for a 3-bedroom would be the 140% affordable house. For a 2-bedroom house, it would be for sale price $631,000, or for a CPR sale price $588,000. And you know, I think even with the DR Horton project, which was one of the more recent housing projects we had on island, a lot of buyers that were gonna try and get the affordable housing price, I think were hesitant because the affordable housing price was so close to fair market value that many of them opted to just buy the house at fair market value and not have any of the deed restrictions that come with the affordable housing requirements. So that's kind of the issues that happen when your 140% is too, when your affordable housing price is too close to fair market value. And so with the elimination of the 140, we had to change up how the assessments are made. So right now, if someone was to build 10 or more units, 30% of those units would need to be affordable. And the makeup of that 30% would be according to this income group assessment, where you see 20% of that 30% needs to be in the 80% range, 30% needs to be in the 100% range, 30% needs to be in 120, and 20% in the 140. And I know the reason for having that mix was that the 140% AMI would compensate, would offset the 80% AMI, and the 120% would offset the 100%, because we all know that selling a house at an affordable rate costs developers money. So they try to balance it out and say, you know, if they're losing money creating these 80%, then we're going to allow them to do the 140%. But with our changes to eliminate 140, we redid the curve. So the curve is now 30% at 80%, 40% at 100%, and 30% at 120. And that's what the current proposal is at.
So the next big item is on the term of affordability, or the period of affordability. The most recent proposal is to increase the term from 20 years, which is current, to 50 years. So in the nexus analysis, they say that the national standard is 45 years. So housing was recommending the 50 years just based on that. I would just say, and Arryl can add anything too, that in our most recent workshop, what really stood out for me was when Stephen Spears from Habitat testified that making it any higher than 30 years would be problematic for them because of how they do their financing. So that's kind of a significant point, and I think that in our and all of the council members were really hearing that. So I'm thinking in our next meeting on the 9th that we may have an amendment coming forward that would lower that proposed increase instead of from 20 to 50, perhaps from 20 to 30.
Yeah, Lisa Ledesma also brought it up also in our meeting with the realtors. So
along the way, we've been hearing from a lot of people.
So the next change, which is a big change, is an exemption to the affordable housing policy within our town core areas. And again, the whole, I guess, goal of this is to put development where we want development. And, you know, we did the general plan, we did a few of the community plans, and, you know, the communities and the general plan were able to identify where those communities wanted development. And so now our goal with this amendment is to kind of help incentivize the development to go where it's supposed to be. So this amendment is to exempt the affordable housing requirement on projects within special planning areas and design districts. And then a big point of it is that those need to be developed at or above the maximum density allowed. So you cannot have an R10 where you can build 10 units on 1 acre and decide to build, 4 big units and get, or you can't have R20 and decide to build, 15 bigger units and get away from the affordable housing requirement. You have to build to your maximum density or more in order to get all of the affordable housing requirement exempted. And again, the goal is to promote infill. We hear a lot about infrastructure being a major component of why it's so difficult to build. And again, this is to get us where infrastructure is. These are targeting areas where we have infrastructure, where we have water, where we sometimes have, where, we did Kuali'i and Kalaheo, which don't have certain infrastructure, but I'll show you the maps right after this slide that, we're really trying to get people on like Rice Street where we have infrastructure available. Maximizing the density is an important part of it because by maximizing the density, you'll create smaller units. And with smaller units, you'll create units that are less expensive. And again, by focusing everyone into the town core areas, you're preventing urban sprawl, which gets away from infrastructure and goes on to ag land or open area, which I think everyone is in agreement that we don't want to see a lot of urban sprawl. This also places new homes where jobs are. And, we hear a lot about traffic. And again, by getting development in the town core areas where jobs are, you're hopefully reducing commute times for a lot of these people that are buying in there and reducing the amount of traffic that is commuting into town or into these job centers. So again, if you're building within these town core areas, which is the Lihui town core area, the Koloa town walkable mixed use district, or the Kalaheo town walkable mixed use district, you would be exempted from the affordable housing requirement if you build to your max. We did hear testimony with concerns about the price of the units if we exempted the affordable housing requirement. And so there was an amendment that was floated, and it's currently in the policy now that all the units within these districts will need to be sold at or below 120% of the Kuali'i, or below 120% of the Kuali'i median household income. And I think the original intent of this change is to make it easier, to incentivize, to have people say, we're making it easier for them to build within the town core area. I know and understand the hesitation on what are the prices of these units going to be, how do we control it? That was the nexus for the 120%, but I don't know, for me personally, I think the 120% doesn't make it easier. So we might see changes on that 120% requirement, because it's very difficult to say we're gonna eliminate the affordable housing requirement in this area, but we're gonna add a 120% or below is the sell price. You're kind of hindering what we're trying to do to begin with. And so again, the 120% for your reference, these are units that would be a 2-bedroom unit would be sold for $490,000. A 3-bedroom unit would be sold for $580,000. These are CPR units. And so the next few slides are just maps of these special planning areas. I'll go through them pretty quick. If you guys want a copy of them, we can send you copies. This first map is of our Lihui town core area. And as you can see, the area is mostly along Rice Street, and then along Ilua Road, Akahi Road, and Umi Road. The next map is of the Koloa town core area. And my final map is of the Kalaheo area. And again, these areas were designated based off of the community plan. So it had community input. These are plans that were approved by the community, came through council, and was approved through council.
And the second part of these exemptions are, again, about exempting multifamily apartment developments from the housing policy. It's primarily intended, yes, to exempt apartments and high-density development. Outside of the VDA, and the thought is by their nature, they will tend to be more affordable. So they're smaller, they're in these R10 or higher, greater density mixed-use zoning districts. I won't repeat all the things that Arryl said, but all the same arguments. Yeah, the other thought I would add about the 120% is the expectation is that being that they are smaller units, they're shared wall in many instances, duplexes, apartment buildings, that the price should be lower without big yards, So we do have maps for this. The first map shows where all the VDAs are. So it wouldn't be any R10 or greater that's in these dark red areas. And as you can see, the biggest ones are in Princeville and Poipu. There's another in Lihue, the Royal Gold, Coconut Coast, and then there's a few small ones in Waimea, and then there, I think that Lihue. And then for area by area in Kekaha, so outside of the VDA and also outside of the special management area. So you see at least half of the units by the coast that is not included because it's in the special management area. Then we have Waimea. To the left, that whole enclosed area is the VDA. To the right, probably the bulk of them again are in the special management area. So just a few, and for sure the one north of the highway there, which I think is where they're having a project being developed right now. And then Hanapepe Ele, there's a lot of R10 there, south of the highway, closer to the coast. But then that other part there is in the special management area too. Another thought too is that of all that green area you see that is general commercial, those could be available for housing as well, of course, because the density is high there, and you could have development.
Yeah.
The ground
Understand it.
and they have housing up above. Then we have Poipu. The overwhelming majority here is in the VDA. Way north of the map where you see mostly green and a couple of pink colored areas, those tiny areas, those are not in the VDA. So those would be eligible. And I think our last one, where there's Lihue. So some significant pieces there, the big pink pieces, and some smaller pieces all over, even out by Puhi, way out in Hanamalu. And then Kapa'a, all right there, I think near the soccer field. And the other thing too, those are lowlands too, yes, potential swamplands. And little bit in Kilauea. The issue with Kilauea though is Kilauea Community Plan has had more restrictions than what we're planning is allowing here. So, and then all of the lands in Princeville is in the VDA. All of the R10. That's the last one. And then the only thing about both of these exemptions Arryl talked about and I talked about, they're subject to a sunset clause for 10 years.
Okay, and then the final big amendment we did is regarding resort development. And the Nexus study found that previously or currently, if you're building a resort, everyone does an individual custom workforce analysis to determine how much affordable housing they need to provide due to their resort. And the Nexus found that the results were very inconsistent. I believe that sometimes it said they didn't need to provide any affordable housing based on the report. And so the Nexus wanted us to provide some type of predictability, a single defined standard. And based on the information we had in the Nexus study, it said, you know, if resorts did 35% affordable housing, it was economically feasible. Anything more than that, it would be difficult for them to do. The Nexus study also said that with every new resort development, they actually need 45 to 100% affordable housing. So for every unit they do, they need to provide a housing unit for that based on, you know, the workers that work at the hotels. So, you know, the original amendment we had was just to require 50% workforce housing requirement on all new resorts based on the Nexus study. And we did get pushback on that. And so there was another amendment, which is in it now, that if a resort can either do 50% workforce housing requirement, and that's predictable, they know what to do, or they can do their own custom workforce analysis, and we'll allow them to do that, but the requirement for housing cannot be less than 35%. Knowing that they will be creating a need and demand for more housing with every new resort that's built. And so the 35% is to ensure that they don't get away from not building any type of affordable housing. And so that is pretty much our major changes to the policy. Let me end my share screen. Can you guys see us now?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. Okay. And so with that, I know it's a lot of information. We'll open it up to questions.
Great, guys. So if you have questions, rather than shouting them out or trying to get them in line, if you can type them into the chat, I will try to moderate them. One of the first questions from Karen Ono was if you could explain why Kuali'i Park in Kalaheo was added to the town core district as marked on the maps. I don't know if either of you know why that is. It's an old reservoir, so probably not an ideal place to build housing.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm not sure. That, again, that came out of the South Kuali'i Community Plan.
Okay.
Those plans get worked on by, they have a group of people from the community that work on the plan. It goes through, I believe, Planning Commission, and then it comes to County Council. But I mean, for the most part, I don't think there's going to be any housing on there at all. Anyways, it's a park. I don't see it changing from a park. Yeah, why it got included as infill area or town core area, I'm not sure. I can tell you, I don't know of any plans to develop Kuali'i Park besides using it as a park.
Great. Okay, so next question is, how did the Nexus report base their cost studies? And I think to expand on that question, what I'm going to say is, how did they, I guess, incorporate the cost per unit for things like resort development and absorption of those expenses for what could be afforded, right? Where that balance is for what can be afforded as an expense. Do you know?
Resort development or for the?
I think in general, I think the question is broader than that. It's about basically, I think about cost absorption of under market rate units and what was affordable to build. Do you have any idea how they came up with that methodology?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't have the Nexus study in front of me. I know the cost per unit that they were saying was about $450,000 to almost $500,000 a unit is what they were basing the cost off of. for resort, again, when they did do the resort costs, they said, yeah, if you require anything more than 35%, it's not feasible for a resort to do it. But they are creating the need for more housing. So we were kind of in this predicament on what do we do? Do we allow them to just do 35%, which is supposed to be feasible enough for them to do it, although they're creating more than 50%
I think it was
demand
like
for
even up
housing.
to 100%.
Yeah, 50 to 100%. And so we kind of got in a predicament on that one where I think, we played hardball a little bit and requiring the 50% affordable housing requirement, and then kind of had to back off on it a little bit with allowing a minimum of 35%.
And then the next question comes from Mike Danduran, and has there been any discussion on allowing higher density, 5 or 6 stories in the town cores to try and maximize density in the urban areas? And and I think then an add-on question to that is, how does parking relate to higher density?
So there's, higher density in place already along Rice Street. And in all of that, and I wasn't on the council at the time, but I don't believe there's any intention to go higher than the limit that is in place now. I don't think anybody wants to see, super tall buildings anywhere on the island.
Can I speak on this?
No, Mike, I'm sorry. I've got to ask you not to. So just for clarification, KipuKai or Arryl, could you guys clarify what that additional density is on Rice Street?
So Rice Street's density was R20. And in the last council, I was on it too. We increased the density to R40. But again, we did not, and we had no intention of allowing the buildings to be higher, because that would change the look and feel of the units. We based our decisions off of examples like the Lihui Town, I think it's Lihui Townhomes, or that big concrete building near Poles. As far as a R40 project or close to R40, Lihui Court.
No,
As
Town Court, I don't know.
yeah.
The one on Rice Street.
The big
We all know the one you're talking about, the concrete block building. Yeah.
And we know that, hey, we're going to increase the density. We're going to allow people, if we start increasing the height, then we're going to be allowing people to increase the size of their units also. So the whole intent and of being comfortable of doubling the actual density along Rice Street was knowing that we're keeping the height in place. If we change the height, I think the vote on that density would have been different. But I think everyone was confident knowing that at the height limit we have, we can kind of get an idea of what the look and feel of this building is going to look like.
Sure.
That's what would happen. It wouldn't be part of this bill. It would be a planning bill separate.
Yeah, that should be more zoning oriented. Yeah. So as the add-on question to that, I know that in conversations with some of our planning staff, parking has been one of the issues that comes up when we talk about higher density. There's been a lot of concern and a lot of discussion at council about how parking is addressed. And I think in the urban core areas, as we start to maximize density, having 2 parking spots, off-street parking spots per unit is going to become more and more challenging to fit in maximum density and parking. Has there been any discussion about that?
Yeah, we talked to planning a lot about that at that time with the R40, and I believe they were going to reduce the parking requirements. I think Kaina brought up that on Oahu, they actually eliminated parking requirements for some units to try and force people to take public transportation. But based on the parking requirements we had, for us, we got a lot of our info from planning, from the admin also, and they were comfortable, and we were comfortable at the time also to know that someone could build an R40 building at our height requirements and still be able to have enough parking area for it.
And obviously the belief with building infill development in the town cores is that there will be people, whether it's young people or older people. I mean, look at our senior housing now, where they will live in town and they will walk to the services they need. Obviously we need a grocery store in the middle of Louis town, but more people will walk instead of even own a car.
Yeah, and I believe the Rice Camp Senior Affordable Housing Project has less than one parking spot per unit.
Yeah, and I
again, it's
just want to mention, I believe that project came up as an example.
Yep, and it is part of what they call transportation-oriented development, TOD,
Yep.
where we encourage people to use alternative forms of transportation besides one car per person. Great, thank you for that. Next, let's see. So I'll skip on to a question with Aaron, from Karen Ono. We hear a lot of discussion about the missing middle or gap group, and I think she's referring to the 80% of AMI all the way up to 140% of AMI. And yet there's a proposal to remove the, I think she means 120 to 140 AMI that is defined in this housing policy as part of the gap group. What are the plans to include all groups, including the gap group, that you are now removing from the policy? So I think, how should I expand on that to make it more? There's concern that removing that portion of the gap group will then not produce housing for that group. And I guess what's the goal on how we fill that if that group is removed? Does it sound right, Karen?
Yeah, I think again, you know, looking at like the Rice Camp example, the Lihui concrete building, I can't remember the name, forum, you know, where the whole intention is, you know, to make it easier for people to build without the affordable housing requirements, but yet trying to shape the units into units that are gonna be, by most means, more affordable. You know, they're not units on ag land, 10 acres with one house on it. These are units that are connected in an apartment building complex, or maybe even like a DR Horton type, you know, multifamily complex. And again, you know, our whole intent is to create more housing, to get more housing on Kauai at that gap house rate housing price. You know, currently the ordinance that we have now has been in place for 13 years, and we've created zero affordable housing with that policy. So the whether it's the market conditions or the policy being too costly on developers to provide all of that affordable housing, we created zero. We created no development has happened with this policy. So we created zero houses within that gap area. And again, for us, it's really taking a step back and seeing that has really hurt us over the last 10 years as far as our housing stock goals and just housing for local residents. So, you know, it was really to take a step back and say, what can we do to make it easier to get housing on Kauai, which we desperately need. And that was basically the idea behind the exemption. It's to get the housing in the town core areas where, hey, you know, we're taking a gamble. That's why we're putting that 10-year sunset on it, to see what's going to happen, to see how things go. But we really had to do something. And again, you know, with the height restrictions on the buildings, making them maximize their density, you know, all these things are playing into part to try and create more units that are smaller.
Great. And KipuKai, there is another question there, and I think Arryl covered it from his perspective, but if you wanted to add anything about why you feel that we have such a housing shortage, that's a question that came up, is what do you think the cause is of this housing shortage?
I mean, if we just look back at what hasn't been happening, that's what this bill is trying to address, that gap housing for the 80, 100, 120, 140 at market. Private development has not been happening. Private investment has not been happening. And so this bill is even more necessary to incentivize that. You know, there's different reasons. In the past, and obviously we have a struggle now going forward with COVID and all, but this bill should do what it was originally intended to do and provide the incentives. And we are hearing from a lot of different potential developers who could do these projects. So we have to try.
Great. Yeah. And then I have a question from Larry Graff of PAL, Permanent Affordable Living. Will a priority and preference be applied to the town core and high density areas covered under the proposed exemption? And Larry, I'm guessing you don't have a video up, so I can't see if I get a thumbs up from you on this. I'm guessing that you mean, will the administration place a priority on preference for development in those areas? Is that what you're aiming at there? Okay, he's giving me the thumbs up. So I guess, and this isn't really a council kind of question. Maybe this is more, you can speculate it about whether or not a priority or preference for town core with high density will be given permitting preferences.
Oh, no, no.
So we
Oh.
can't-
Larry, you're on mute.
I'm sorry.
It's for eligibility for the project, the priority
Okay.
and preference for eligibility.
I gotcha. Okay. So I think what he's speaking about is there are exemptions that are available for reduction in fee on the FRC charge and permitting fees. And will these be given some permitting priority to get those exemptions? If they're in the affordable
Oh,
range.
it's for the wait list, guys, for the wait list, for locals only, for residents of the area.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know that you guys can answer that. It seems like more of an administrative question, but
It was in the ordinance.
As far as the sale of the units goes, or
We're talking about the gap housing, right? 80%, 100%, 120% with the 140 need. If any of those developments fully meets 120 or lower, they will be eligible for the exemptions. I think at 120% or lower, it's only 50%. And I think at 80% and lower, it's 100%. All of those other exemptions, right? The permitting, the water, I mean, so the lower you get and you make the entire project affordable, then you qualify for this additional exemptions.
okay.
So the lower amount, 80% or lower, I believe is 100%, but 120% or lower, it's 50%.
So yeah, I think we've misunderstood his question, and it looks like he's typing away to clarify there. We are starting to run out of time here. I want to keep it short and be respectful of everyone's time. So I do have another question asking, based on this legislation, do you think that developers will come back to Kauai to do more development? And I think that's meaning private developers specifically.
We're hopeful.
it's hard to say, you know, I mean, we still have people saying that it's still too hard to build even based on this legislation. You know, we may see further changes to try and make it easier, but it's hard to say. You know, there's market conditions that affect it. I think basically the goal of what we were trying to do was to make it easier than what the current ordinance was. And I think that was the main goal, you know, to try and stimulate some type of housing, to make it easier than where the current policy is. Whether we're gonna get a whole influx of developers trying to build, or, you know, we don't know. It takes a long time to build. There's a lot of factors to it. All our intent is to try to make it easier.
Great. You know, in Shiloh, it's 10:50. I think we said we were going to be done by 10:45. So I know there's inevitably more questions, and I'm sure that both of our council members would be happy to answer questions. If you guys want to share your emails real quick with the group so that they can send you further questions, or if you want to send them through Shiloh, and Shiloh can always forward them on as well. I think I appreciate your time today. We had a couple of comments really thanking you for coming on and discussing this ordinance with the group. And thank you for just taking the time today.
Thank you, you guys.
Type it into the chat.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stay engaged with us. We're happy to hear from you. Our next committee meeting is on the 9th in a couple of weeks, and we continue to work on this. The hope is that we pass a bill, and then the next council can continue to work on it with another bill. I mean, it's not done.
Yeah, and again, you know, it is just to try and help the policy along. It's not
And
silver bullet answer to all of our affordable housing issues. It's just, we're just trying to chip away at it and try to get something going.
Thank you, guys. You guys are doing awesome. I am going to share this recording with the rest of the board members of Kauai Board of Realtors as well. I don't know, Arryl, if you guys wanted to share your PowerPoint as well, then I can send that to them as well. Other than that, yeah, thank you so much for your time, everyone, and for all your hard work, Arryl and KipuKai. Mahalo.
Thanks for having us.
yeah, say aloha.
Okay, thanks.
Aloha.
Thank you,
Bye.
Shiloh, Callie.
Oh, hi, Mark.